The anesthesia record showed Dr. Aris was in operating room 7 for 6 hours and 14 minutes. The hospital's billing department charged Michael's insurance $127,000 for those 6 hours of the surgeon's time. But here's what the valet parking receipt showed. Dr. Aris's Porsche left the hospital at 10:47 a.m., exactly 15 minutes after Michael went under. The security footage from Morton's Steakhouse shows him laughing with pharmaceutical executives while a 28-year-old resident was severing nerves in Michael's spine that would never heal. Every year, 4,000 Americans wake up from surgery to find out the surgeon they paid for, researched, and trusted never touched them. It's called ghost surgery, and it's not illegal if they don't explicitly lie about it. But here's what the medical establishment doesn't want you to know. You have weapons they can't defend against, audit logs that track every edit to your medical records, security footage they're required to preserve. And in most states, you can legally record your doctor visits. This isn't just Michael's revenge story. This is your handbook for what to do when a doctor looks you in the eye and lies. When a hospital's risk management team tries to bury you in paperwork. When everyone tells you these things happen, but your gut screams something's wrong. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how Michael turned an iPhone recording into a $12 million verdict. And you'll never sign another surgical consent form the same way again. Let me take you back to where this started. Michael Chen was 44 years old, and up until 6 months before his surgery, he was the guy you'd see at 5 a.m. running through his neighborhood in San Francisco, marathon runner, rock climber on weekends, the kind of person who tracked his macros and could tell you his resting heart rate from memory. Then one morning, he bent down to tie his running shoes, and something in his lower back went pop. Not a good pop. The kind of pop that makes you freeze, afraid to move, knowing something fundamental just went wrong. At first, Michael did what high achievers do. He pushed through. Ice packs, heating pads, those expensive ergonomic chairs that promised to fix everything. But the pain wasn't just staying, it was spreading. Down his left leg like someone was pouring acid along his sciatic nerve. By month 3, he couldn't sit through a Zoom meeting without standing up every 10 minutes. By month 5, he was sleeping on the floor because lying in bed felt like torture. And by month 6, when his doctor looked at his MRI and said the words severe disc herniation at L4, L5 with nerve impingement, Michael knew he was headed for surgery. Now, if you're Michael Chen, software engineer, analytical mind, you don't just pick the first surgeon who shows up on Google. You research, you spreadsheet, you read every review, check every credential, cross-reference success rates. And that's how he found Dr. Konstantin Aris, Harvard Medical School, Johns Hopkins residency, 2,000 successful spinal surgeries. The kind of surgeon whose waiting room has signed photos from professional athletes and celebrities. The kind whose TED Talk on minimally invasive spine surgery has 3 million views. The kind who, when you mention his name to other doctors, they nod with that mix of respect and envy that tells you this is the guy. The consultation was in a building that looked more like a luxury hotel than a medical office. Marble floors, original artwork, a receptionist who offered Michael sparkling water with cucumber slices while he waited. And the waiting, that should have been the first red flag. The appointment was at 2 p.m. Michael didn't see Dr. Aris until 3:45. The waiting room was packed. Patients cycled through like an assembly line. But when you're in pain, when you've been told this is the best, you rationalize. Busy means good, right? Busy means in demand. When Dr. Aris finally swept into the exam room, he had that energy that certain surgeons have, that mixture of confidence and impatience that makes you feel both completely safe and slightly rushed. He looked at Michael's MRI for maybe 30 seconds, then looked Michael in the eye and said, "I can fix this. I've done this exact surgery more times than I can count. You'll be running again in 3 months." The consultation lasted 10 minutes. The surgical coordinator, a different person entirely, handled all the details. The cost, $127,000, though insurance would cover most of it. The date, October 8, 2022. The risks, minimal in Dr. Aris's skilled hands. Michael asked the question that, looking back, should have mattered more. Will you personally be doing the surgery? Dr. Aris laughed. Not mockingly, but that casual laugh of someone who's been asked if water is wet. Of course. My team assists, but I do the surgery. That's what you're paying for. Michael signed the consent form, and right there, he did something that might have saved his life. He wrote in the margin, "Surgery to be performed by Dr. Constantine Aris personally," and initialed it. The surgical coordinator looked at it, shrugged, and filed it away. A small act that would become enormous later. October 8th came faster than expected. Michael arrived at the hospital at 6 a.m., his wife Sarah holding his hand in the pre-op area. The nurse who prepped him was cheerful, professional, drawing smiley faces on the IV bags. Dr. Aris appeared at exactly 10:15, dressed in scrubs, looking every bit the part of the surgeon you'd want operating on your spine. He took a marker and drew on Michael's back, marking the surgical site. "This is so we don't operate on the wrong spot," he joked. Michael laughed nervously. Sarah squeezed his hand. Dr. Aris looked him in the eye and said the words Michael would replay in his mind 1,000 times afterward. "See you on the other side, champ." At 10:32 a.m., the anesthesiologist pushed the propofol into Michael's IV. The last thing he remembered was counting backward from 10. He made it to 7. What happened next, Michael wouldn't know for months. But thanks to security cameras, parking receipts, and one very troubled nurse, we can piece together exactly what occurred minute by minute. 10:47 a.m. 15 minutes after Michael went unconscious, Dr. Aris's Porsche 911 Turbo, license plate Spine DR, because, of course, that was his vanity plate, exited the hospital parking garage. The valet receipt, which would later become Exhibit 17 inches the lawsuit, showed the timestamp clear as day. 10:52 a.m., Dr. Rachel Kim, a second-year resident who had observed exactly 3 spinal surgeries and performed 0 as primary surgeon, made the first incision into Michael's back. Her hands were shaking. The surgical nurse, Patricia Hernandez, would later testify that she asked Dr. Kim 3 times if they should wait for Dr. Aris. Dr. Kim's response, which she had clearly been coached to say, "Dr. Aris gave me detailed instructions. He'll be back for the critical portions." 11:15 a.m. Dr. Aris's signature appears on a sign-in sheet at Morton's Steakhouse, 3 blocks from the hospital. He was attending what was described as a pharmaceutical educational lunch, hosted by Medtronic, a medical device company whose spinal implants Dr. Aris exclusively used. The lunch was in a private dining room. $30,000 wine bottles would later show up on the receipt that got subpoenaed during discovery. 11:45 a.m. Back in operating room 7, Dr. Kim encountered unexpected bleeding near the L4-L5 disc space. Michael's anatomy was slightly different than the MRI had shown. Not unusual, but requiring experienced judgment about how to proceed. Dr. Kim texted Dr. Aris. No response. She texted again. Nothing. The anesthesiologist asked if they should abort the surgery. Dr. Kim, 28 years old, $200,000 in student loans, desperate not to disappoint her attending physician, made a decision. She kept cutting. The next 20 minutes would determine the rest of Michael's life. The bleeding obscured her view. The nerve root she was supposed to carefully preserve, the one that controlled movement in Michael's left leg, was accidentally severed. Not partially damaged, severed, like cutting a phone line. No signal would ever pass through it again. 1:15 p.m. Dr. Aris returned to the OR. Smelling faintly of red wine and expensive cologne, he saw the damage immediately. The surgical notes, the official ones, would say the nerve was inadvertently compromised due to patient's unusual anatomy. What they wouldn't say is that Dr. Aris spent the next 40 minutes trying to salvage what couldn't be salvaged, and the rest of the time making sure the incision would heal beautifully. Because a pretty scar means a lot when you're trying to convince a patient that everything went perfectly. Michael woke up at 3 p.m. in the recovery room. The first thing he noticed wasn't the pain in his back. It was that he couldn't feel his left foot. Not numbness like when your foot falls asleep. Nothing. Like it wasn't there, he told the recovery nurse. She said it was normal, the anesthesia, give it time. But her eyes did that thing medical professionals' eyes do when something's wrong but they can't say it. By evening, when the anesthesia had completely worn off, Michael still couldn't move his left leg. Dr. Aris came by at 7 p.m., still in scrubs, looking concerned but not worried. There's a difference. Concerned is performance. Worried is real. Michael, he said, sitting on the edge of the bed like a father about to give difficult news, your anatomy was more complex than the MRI showed. We encountered some unexpected challenges. The inflammation around the nerve is significant. This temporary weakness, it's not uncommon. Give it time. Sarah asked the question directly. Is the paralysis permanent? Dr. Aris's response was a masterclass in medical gaslighting. Paralysis is a strong word. Let's call it weakness. And nothing in medicine is permanent until we've given it adequate time to heal. I've seen patients with similar presentations make full recoveries. We need to be patient. Patient, as if Michael had any other choice. The next 2 weeks were a blur of pain medication, physical therapy that went nowhere, and a growing understanding that something was very, very wrong. Michael could move his right leg fine, but the left remained dead weight. The physical therapist, trying to be encouraging, kept saying things like, nerves heal slowly, and every patient is different. But Michael saw the way she looked at his chart, the way she exchanged glances with the other therapists. Michael did what he always did when faced with a problem. He researched medical forums, academic papers, YouTube videos of similar surgeries, and the more he learned, the more wrong Dr. Aris's explanation seemed, unusual anatomy doesn't cause complete nerve paralysis. Inflammation doesn't last this long without improvement. Something had gone wrong during the surgery itself. Something Dr. Aris wasn't telling him. The 2-week post-op appointment was when the real gaslighting began. Michael came prepared with questions, specific, technical questions about surgical approach and nerve preservation. Dr. Aris's responses were smooth, practiced, peppered with just enough medical jargon to sound authoritative while saying nothing. When Michael pressed about the paralysis, Dr. Aris's tone shifted. Michael, I understand you're frustrated, but questioning the surgery isn't helpful for your recovery. You need to focus on positive thinking. Some patients, frankly, sabotage their own healing with negativity. Sabotage their own healing, as if Michael was choosing not to move his leg. Sarah requested the surgical notes. It took 3 weeks and 4 phone calls to get them. When they arrived, several pages were missing. They requested the complete file. They were told that was the complete file. They requested the surgical video, standard in most spine surgeries. They were told the recording system had malfunctioned that day. Just that day. Just during Michael's surgery. Michael might have accepted it, might have joined the thousands of patients every year who experience surgical complications and simply live with them. But then, 6 weeks after the surgery, something happened that changed everything. It was 2 a.m. when the doorbell rang. Sarah answered, finding a woman in scrubs standing in the darkness. Patricia Hernandez, the surgical nurse from OR 7. She looked terrified. I shouldn't be here, she said. I could lose my job, but I can't sleep. What happened to your husband? It wasn't right. They sat at the kitchen table, Patricia clutching a cup of tea like a lifeline, and she told them everything. How Dr. Aris left 15 minutes into the surgery. How Dr. Kim was clearly unqualified. How the bleeding started and no one knew what to do. How Dr. Aris came back smelling like alcohol. How she'd seen him do this before, leaving residents to operate while he attended important meetings. But the worst part, Patricia said, tears now flowing, is that my nephew, he had the same thing happen 2 years ago. Different hospital, different surgeon, same result, paralyzed. They told his family it was a complication too. I stayed quiet then. I can't stay quiet now. She gave them something invaluable, names of other nurses who had witnessed similar incidents, dates when Dr. Aris had left surgeries, and, most importantly, she told them about the pharmaceutical lunch. Check the sign-in sheet at Morton's, she said. They keep them for tax purposes. Michael and Sarah found a lawyer the next day. Not just any lawyer. Robert Castellanos, a former surgeon himself who had switched to law after watching too many colleagues prioritize profit over patients. He listened to their story, reviewed the documents, and said something that would stick with Michael forever. The cover-up is always worse than the crime. And doctors who lie once have lied before. The first thing Castellanos did was file for discovery. Not just medical records, but everything. Security footage, parking records, Dr. Aris's cell phone location data. The hospital fought every request, claiming privacy, claiming irrelevance, claiming everything except the truth. But Castellanos knew the system. He knew that hospitals keep everything, terrified of liability, and that metadata doesn't lie even when doctors do. The security footage was damning. There was Dr. Aris walking out of the hospital at 10:47 a.m., chatting on his phone, not a care in the world. The parking receipt matched perfectly. The valet even remembered him because Dr. Aris had complained about a scratch on his Porsche and demanded the valet company's insurance information. But they needed more. They needed Dr. Aris himself to admit what he'd done. That's when Castellanos proposed something that seemed crazy. California is a two-party consent state for recording, he said, except for crimes. And fraud is a crime. If you can get him to admit he lied about being in the surgery, we can use it. But how do you get a surgeon with 40 years of experience, trained to never admit fault, to confess? You use his own arrogance against him. Michael scheduled a follow-up appointment for January 15, 2023, 3 months after the surgery. He told Dr. Aris he was still experiencing paralysis and wanted to discuss options. He wore a wire. Actually, that's dramatic. He had his iPhone in his chest pocket, voice memo app running. Sarah came with him, her job to keep Dr. Aris relaxed, chatting, off guard. The appointment started normally. Dr. Aris examined Michael's leg, or pretended to, making notes about continued weakness and slower than expected recovery. Then Michael played confused. Doctor, I've been having these weird dreams. Maybe it's the pain medication, but I keep dreaming that you weren't there during my surgery. Crazy, right? Dr. Aris laughed. That same casual laugh from the consultation. The mind plays tricks during recovery. I assure you, I was there. But the nurse? One of them mentioned something about you stepping out? I must have misunderstood. Dr. Aris's demeanor shifted slightly, a tightening around the eyes. Which nurse? They shouldn't be discussing surgical details with patients. This was the moment. Michael knew he had one shot. He played vulnerable, desperate. Doctor, I need to know. My leg, it's not getting better. If something went wrong, if someone else did something during the surgery, I need to know so I can understand why I'm not healing. Please, just tell me the truth. Were you there the whole time? Sarah started crying. Real tears, thinking about her husband who could barely walk. Dr. Aris looked at them both. Maybe it was Sarah's tears. Maybe it was his own ego, the need to be seen as the authority, the one in control. Maybe he just thought these people were too damaged, too powerless to do anything with the truth. He leaned back in his chair and said the words that would cost him everything. Listen, between us, okay? Off the record? Sometimes, during routine portions of surgery, attending surgeons step out briefly. It's standard in teaching hospitals. The residents need experience. They're supervised, capable. I was overseeing a critical situation in another OR. These things happen. The hospital knows. It's how we train the next generation. Your surgery, the critical parts, I was there for those. Michael stayed calm, though inside he was screaming. The critical parts? What about when the nerve was damaged? That was an anatomical anomaly. No one could have prevented that. Even if I'd been. I was there, but even the best surgeon couldn't have avoided that outcome given your unusual anatomy. He'd slipped. That little pause, even if I'd been, it was small, but it was there. Sarah pushed one more time. So, you were gone? During Michael's surgery, you were gone? Dr. Aris stood up, the appointment over in his mind. I've explained the situation. These surgeries, they're routine. Whether I'm physically present for every single minute or overseeing from nearby, the outcome would have been the same. Your husband's nerve was always going to be compromised given his anatomy. Now, we need to focus on moving forward, not dwelling on details that don't change anything. But those details changed everything. The lawsuit was filed a week later. Medical malpractice, fraud, intentional infliction of emotional distress. The hospital's initial response was predictable: deny everything, claim the recording was inadmissible, attack Michael's credibility. Their lawyers, a team from one of those firms with names like 4 last names strung together, filed motion after motion, trying to bury the case in procedure. But then discovery began, and the house of cards started falling. First, they found the other surgeries. 47 operations in the past 3 years where Dr. Aris had marked himself as primary surgeon, but operating room logs showed him absent for significant portions. The pattern was always the same: wealthy patients paying full price. Dr. Aris starting the surgery for appearance, leaving for important meetings, returning for closing. Then came the other victims. Once Michael's story went public, filed in open court, they started reaching out. A teacher from Sacramento whose back surgery left her unable to stand for more than 10 minutes. A firefighter from San Diego with permanent foot drop. A mother of 3 from Los Angeles who woke up incontinent. All of them told the same story: complications, unusual anatomy, bad luck. The depositions were where Dr. Aris really destroyed himself. Under oath, with a camera recording, he couldn't keep his stories straight. He claimed he was in the OR the entire time. When presented with the parking receipt, he said he must have left after the surgery. When shown the timestamp proving that was impossible, he said the receipt must be wrong. When shown the security footage, he claimed it was a different day. When shown the metadata proving the date, he finally said he might have stepped out briefly, but was monitoring the situation. His own resident, Dr. Kim, terrified of perjury, admitted the truth. She'd never been trained for that surgery. She'd asked to wait for Dr. Aris. She'd made the critical error that severed Michael's nerve, and Dr. Aris had told her afterward to never mention he'd been gone, that it would ruin both their careers. The pharmaceutical company's records were the final nail. Not only had Dr. Aris attended the lunch, he'd given a presentation about surgical techniques. While Michael was open on an operating table, Dr. Aris was showing PowerPoint slides about innovative approaches to spinal fusion, the same fusion Michael was supposedly receiving at that exact moment. The hospital, seeing the writing on the wall, tried to settle. $3 million, no admission of wrongdoing, confidentiality agreement. Michael refused. This wasn't about money anymore. It was about making sure everyone knew what happened. The trial lasted 2 weeks. The jury selection alone took 3 days, finding 12 people who could listen to medical testimony without their eyes glazing over. The opening statements set the tone. The defense painted Michael as a bitter patient looking for someone to blame for an unfortunate but unavoidable outcome. The prosecution played the recording, Dr. Aris admitting he'd left. The gasps from the jury were audible. The witnesses told the story piece by piece. The valet who remembered Dr. Aris complaining about his car, the restaurant manager who'd saved the sign-in sheet, Patricia, the nurse, crying as she described watching a resident panic while a patient bled. Dr. Kim, granted immunity, explaining how she'd been thrown into a surgery she wasn't prepared for. But the most powerful moment was when Michael testified. He didn't talk about the pain, though it was constant. He didn't focus on what he'd lost, though it was everything he loved. He talked about trust, about lying on that operating table, counting backward, believing that the person he'd researched, vetted, and paid would be there. About waking up broken and being told it was his fault, his anatomy, his negativity preventing healing. "I can live with the paralysis," Michael said, looking directly at Dr. Aris. "What I can't live with is the lie. Every patient after me who didn't know their surgeon left them on the table like a piece of meat while he went to lunch. That's what this is about." Dr. Aris testified on day 9. His lawyers had begged him not to, but his ego wouldn't let the allegations stand without response. He was polished, professional, attempting to explain the complexities of modern surgical practice, teaching hospitals, resident training, the team approach to medicine. But under cross-examination, he fell apart. The prosecutor, a woman named Jessica Chen, who happened to be no relation to Michael but who took this case personally, systematically destroyed every excuse. "Doctor, you said resident training is important. Is it standard to train residents on patients who haven't consented to be training cases?" "Well, all surgeries and teaching hospitals involve residents. That wasn't my question. Is it standard to leave a resident alone during a complex spine surgery without informing the patient? I didn't leave her alone. I was supervising, from a steakhouse 3 blocks away. I was briefly absent. Briefly? The records show you were gone for over an hour during the critical portion of the surgery. The resident was capable, so capable that she severed Mr. Chen's nerve? That was an anatomical anomaly. Was it? Or was it a second-year resident encountering bleeding she didn't know how to handle? And on it went, every excuse shredded, every lie exposed. By the time Dr. Aris left the stand, he looked smaller, older, like a facade had been stripped away. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. They returned with a verdict that made headlines across the country. Liable for malpractice, liable for fraud, liable for intentional infliction of emotional distress. $4 million in compensatory damages for Michael's medical costs, lost income, and pain. $8 million in punitive damages to send a message. $12 million total. The largest medical malpractice verdict in California that year. But the money was just the beginning. The medical board launched an investigation. 6 months later, Dr. Aris's license was revoked. Not suspended, revoked. The federal government opened a fraud investigation for billing for surgeries he didn't perform. The hospital settled with 17 other patients, the total exceeding $50 million. They instituted new policies. Cameras in all operating rooms, attending surgeons required to be present for all critical portions, electronic tracking of who's in the OR. Dr. Aris appealed, of course. His lawyers argued the recording was inadmissible. The appeals court disagreed. They argued the damages were excessive. The court found them appropriate given the deliberate nature of the deception. His final appeal to the state Supreme Court was rejected without comment. Today, Dr. Constantine Aris is no longer a doctor. His name is off the building. His TED Talk has been removed. He teaches no students, performs no surgeries, appears at no conferences. He lives in his mansion in Marin County, but the for sale sign has been up for 2 years. No one wants to buy the house of the doctor who paralyzed his patients while eating lunch. Michael Chen still can't run. He walks with a cane on good days, uses a wheelchair on bad ones, but he's become something more powerful than a marathon runner. He's become an advocate. He speaks at medical schools about informed consent. He testifies before state legislatures about surgical transparency. His nonprofit, Patients Over Profits, has helped pass legislation in 3 states requiring disclosure of exactly who will be performing surgery. At his speeches, Michael always says the same thing. I went into that operating room trusting the system. I came out understanding that trust without verification is just hope. And hope is not enough when someone has a scalpel to your spine. But let me tell you what Michael's case really means for you. Because unless you're a 44-year-old software engineer in San Francisco, you might think this doesn't apply to you. You're wrong. Right now, in hospitals across America, surgeons are leaving operating rooms. They're not all going to lunch. Some are starting other surgeries, double booking like airlines, assuming nothing will go wrong. Some are taking phone calls from their brokers. Some are just tired, letting residents they barely know take over while they rest. And it's legal. As long as they don't explicitly lie about it, it's legal. But here's what Michael taught us. You have power. Before surgery, write on your consent form, to be performed by doctor name personally. Take a photo of it. If they object, that's your red flag. During recovery, if something feels wrong, request the complete medical records immediately. Don't wait. Records have a way of being edited. Videos of malfunctioning, notes of changing. Request the audit logs, those digital fingerprints that show when and by whom records were edited. Most people don't know these exist. Now you do. If you're in a 2-party consent state, remember that recording someone committing fraud isn't illegal. If you're in a 1-party consent state, you can record any conversation you're part of. Your phone is your most powerful tool. Use it. Ask specific questions. Not, did everything go okay? But, were you present for the entire surgery? Not, were there complications? But, did anything unexpected happen that required a decision about how to proceed? Watch their eyes. Doctors are trained to deliver bad news, but they're not trained to lie convincingly about specific facts. Get second opinions, but not from doctors in the same hospital system. They protect each other. Go outside the network. Pay out of pocket if you have to. A few $100s for an independent review is nothing compared to a lifetime of paralysis. And if something has already gone wrong, if you're living with a complication that doesn't make sense, that doesn't match what you were told, don't accept it. Patricia the nurse exists in every hospital. Someone knows what really happened. Someone's conscience is bothering them. Find them. Michael's $12 million didn't give him his leg back. The money is sitting in accounts, paying for physical therapy that doesn't work, modifications to a house he never wanted to modify, a future that looks nothing like the one he planned. But when he got that recording of Dr. Aris admitting the truth, when he played it in court and watched the jury's faces change, when he stood outside the courthouse and told reporters that no patient should ever wake up to find out their surgeon valued lunch over their life, that's when he got something back. Not his leg, his power. Because that's what this is really about. Not the money, not even the justice. It's about power. The power they take when they put you under. The power they assume when they wear that white coat. The power they expect you to surrender when they say it was a complication, an anomaly, bad luck. Michael took that power back, and he wants you to know you can too. So here's my challenge to you. Share this story. Not just clicking share, but actually talking about it. Tell your family, tell your friends, tell anyone who's heading into surgery. Because the more people who know about ghost surgery, about surgical fraud, about the games hospitals play with patient safety, the harder it becomes for them to keep playing those games. If this story made you think differently about your next surgery, hit subscribe, because this isn't the only case like this I'm going to share. The medical establishment has too many secrets, and I'm here to expose every single one of them. If you've experienced something similar, share your story in the comments. You're not alone. You're not crazy, and your story might be the one that gives another patient the courage to fight back. And if you know someone heading into surgery, share this video with them right now. Not tomorrow, not after their surgery, right now. It might save them from waking up to a nightmare. It might be the thing that makes them write on their consent form, surgery to be performed by doctor personally. It might be the reason they record their post-op appointment. It might save their life. This is Casebound, reminding you that sometimes the best revenge isn't just living well. Sometimes it's making sure it never happens to anyone else. Sometimes it's taking back the power they thought they stole from you. Sometimes it's turning your pain into purpose, your suffering into change, your story into salvation for someone else. I'll see you in the next case. And trust me, the next one is even worse. A plastic surgeon who performed procedures patients never consented to while they were under. A hospital that knew and did nothing. A woman who woke up disfigured and was told she signed papers she never saw. But she had something they didn't expect. A friend in the OR who recorded everything. Until then, remember, you're not powerless. You're not just a patient. You're a person with rights, with recourse, with the ability to demand truth. Use it. I'm Casebound, and I'll keep fighting for you.